Hey there, honey bunnies. Welcome to episode 105 of your Sovereign Storytellers podcast with your host, Michelle Wolf. Today we're going to talk about the chemicals of chaos, the thing that happens in our brains when we go through acute traumatic events like a one-off or which is recoverable depending on what it is. But the chemicals of chaos that are produced in acute trauma are they stay in your system when that trauma becomes chronic. So, depending on your viewpoints, we've been under sustained brain dousing of the chemicals of chaos since 2016. If you have a different opinion, I would suspect even by now, your brain also has been doused in the chemicals of chaos for at least for 2020, regardless of what side you're on or any side or whatever. Across the board, everyone's brain has been getting pounded with chemicals, fear, all the things, anxiety, uncertainty, paranoia. My friend Bev always says, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. So, as like a lot of you, I'm tired. I've been sick for a few days with thankfully not the COVID, but just I don't know, some sort of virus, flu-y type stomachy thing. Super gross. And my sleep schedule is a little more off kilter than usual. So I'm tired, and of course I've done really well staying off of Twitter and honoring the time limits I set on social media. I have little timers on my phone. I get an hour of Instagram, 3 hours of Facebook because that's where my business is focused, and an hour of Twitter. So I was staying off Twitter entirely. And then, of course, yesterday happened. I am in the U.S., in the Southeast, in case you didn't notice the accent. So it's been very extra dramatic with the runoff and, both Democratic candidates winning has been overshadowed by the insurrection at the Capitol, and I already know that some people believe that was exaggerated and that the media is blowing it out of proportion, etc. That's not true. People have died, and we shouldn't be making light of it. And I'm not going to go into that because, Jesus, there's just I don't have the I don't have the knowledge for it. I can't. I'm not a good debater because I process information kind of slowly. Sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 days to get from my gut knowledge to find the words. That's a human design thing, by the way. If you're a person who knows things quickly but can't articulate them quickly, just know that that doesn't mean that you're dumb or something. It just means you probably have the stuff in the circuitry that is sensing or knowing. You know things, you don't know how you know, and you don't know how to put words to what you know, sometimes for hours, days, sometimes weeks. Sometimes it can take me weeks to find the words, which is awkward in relationships, when it takes you 2 or 3 weeks to go, hey, wait a minute. I should have said something right there, and I didn't. Then the moment's gone, and you're like, well, fuck. Anyway, way back when, in the late 90s and early 2000s, not late 90s, mid 90s, I started in social work in 1996 in the Child Protective Services unit, which, because of my familiarity with chaos and upheaval and uncertainty and just general personality. I'm the person that runs toward danger, not away from it. Um, so my first job was in emergency medicine, high trauma, erratic schedule, 48 hours running nonstop. The schedules back then used to be 24 on, 24 off, and every other weekend a 48. And if it was a holiday weekend, you got to work a 72-hour shift for the whopping rate of $3.35 an hour. Woo, that was a long time ago. Anyway, so all my jobs have been like chaos focused until I started therapy and figured out, yeah, this is not how I want to continue living my probably already foreshortened life. So I learned a lot at that point. And then when I went to graduate school to be a therapist, I learned more. And then when I specialized in trauma and became an EMDR therapist and started working specifically with trauma and addictions and things of that sort, I learned a lot about what happens to our brains and how we get addicted to those chemicals, the chemicals of crisis, the chemicals of chaos. And I suspect that that's happening to people who may not understand why all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but maybe why over the course of the last few years they've had a harder and harder time staying off of social media. I'm noticing policing behaviors like I'm not just in the coaching world. I have friends with other interests. I am in groups of other interests. I'm in crochet groups. I'm in craft groups, journaling, art. But I'm noticing everywhere this policing thing where, and I've been guilty of it too, and I caught it a few months ago and was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore either. I don't know how I got sucked into that, but the policing thing of I'm going to go scope out everybody's pages and then go back on my page and criticize them because I don't like their response or lack of response. Like their response isn't enough, or their response is inappropriate, or they're not responding and that's wrong. And that's happening across the board in crochet groups, in food groups. So I've been seeing that all summer and it's escalating further. And I know astrologically we're about to peak out. We haven't peaked out yet, and that's kind of horrifying. I don't think we're done yet. For everything I've heard in this last few years has made me a believer in astrology when I really wasn't. Before, I kind of poo-pooed the whole thing, like, yeah, it's cute and ha-ha, and no, I'm not. I don't fit the Scorpio, whatever. But talking to astrologers and then getting involved in human design and hearing these planets are doing this thing and it can look like this, and holy shit, it looks like this times 10, has really made a believer out of me. So according to predictions that have been on the mark, we're not done. So I just want to do a little public service that when we get scared, and I think I talked about this in the last episode as well, about the trauma responses. So I want to revisit that because I want us, you, me, anyone listening who cares to, obviously do what you want to do, but it can be helpful to take a look at the last 6 months of your social media activity. Where are you spending most of your time? Are you getting a dose of news enough to stay in touch with what's happening, but not so much that you start to get physically hooked on these chemicals. So I started in social work in the 90s, right? And so by 1996, by 1998, I had secondary trauma syndrome. It was hellish. And I didn't work in a big city. People think small towns are all, whole milk and apple pie and whatever, but deviance is everywhere. And horrific child abuse is everywhere. And I used to say you can find more molesters around a corporate staff table than at your local dive bar. Like there's a perception that pedophiles are, working at truck stops or whatever, but honestly, they're more likely well respected, well dressed white members of the community. So lots of bitterness, lots of trauma. And so at one point, our unit was forced into therapy, and the guy was an EMDR therapist for the local police department. And I'm very grateful to him. I don't know if he's still in practice. I hope by now he's retired and living on a beach, happy as a clam somewhere, because he was a wonderful guy. But he taught us that we were locked in a cycle of trauma response, and we were, as is common for emergency service workers, first responders, the people first on the scene, the people going to the hospital to document wounded children, people who are first responders end up with this vicarious trauma. Now I hope people are doing a better job. They're not in social work, I can tell you. They're still not doing a good job about keeping people healthy, but I hope they're doing a better job in emergency medicine about, there is ways that you can extend the lifespan of a caseworker or a EMT, but they're not often utilized because they take time and they're inconvenient. Anyway, he taught us that we were acting addicted and we were acting like traumatized people, because we were. There was infighting and paranoia and low flash points. Like, we couldn't tolerate hardly anything. So one little comment could set off a whole thing. And we had just a lot of change, whatever. The details don't matter. Here's what I got from him, is that your body, when it's exposed to a certain recipe of chemicals, I call this the bartender in your brain, your bartender is exposed to a certain recipe. So a madness mojito, chaos and citron, whatever. Your brain just takes these exposures and then replicates them. If you get it, douse your brain with the chemicals of chaos over and over and over, and your brain just keeps reacting that way. It's like you put in an order for cheese fries every time you go to your favorite restaurant, the Trailhead in Fort Collins, Colorado. You go get your cheese fries. Eventually, you walk in the door, and the waitress just puts your cheese fry order in. God love her. Your brain does that too. Like, you are getting this cocktail, this chaos cocktail over and over and over, then your brain just starts producing it all the time. The problem is then when you are like, why am I why am I so high strung? Why have I turned into a walking ball of anxiety? Why am I policing everybody around me and making sure they act the way I say they should act or respond to the way I say they should respond? Why am I I'm not saying don't make your choices. I'm not saying that. Like, everybody has 100% right to make their choices. What I'm concerned about is the energy underneath that. So there's a difference in taking a look at your business and deciding, do I want to narrow my focus? Do I want to be target and serve whoever comes to me? Or do I want to be like the Burberry outlet? Or not the outlet, but like the Harry Winston diamond store where you have to make an appointment to go look at the stuff. Do I want to be super, super, super boutique and exclusive? Or do I want to have a broad range? And that is personal choice. I would never say you should be Target or you should be Harry Winston. Like, that's none of my business. What I get concerned about and start praying for people about is when there's this, it's coming from a place of needing to control because of fear. Like when we get fearful and we stay fearful long enough, like we've been hit again and again and again and again, then we look for places where we can feel control. Well, if we go through and try to control other people, that can make us feel better. If we start getting weird about food, that can make us feel better. If we start eating like ridiculous amounts of food, that can make us feel better in the short term, right? These are all short-term fixes. Like, I'm going to surround myself with only people who have the same values as me. Okay, that's okay. If that's a choice you're making from a calm, I've looked at my options, I can be Target, I can be somewhere in the middle. I don't know, what would be in the middle of between Target and Harry Winston, like Macy's, Dillard's. Does Dillard's even still exist? Here's my values, here's the kind of people I like working with, here's the kind of stuff I teach. Now, where do I want to land on this continuum? That's different, and I support that 100%. But when you're scared and you're like shoving people out the door and then pulling others closer and scrambling, there's this frenetic energy tone to that. I'm still not saying you should or shouldn't be that way. I am saying that should be getting your attention because there's a frenetic, frantic, anxiety-based trauma response energy to that, and that is going to tear you up. It's going to make your stomach hurt. It's going to give you migraines. It's going to flare up autoimmune stuff. It's going to make you sick. And this is not a time when any of us need to be vulnerable to being sick, right? Like, we need to amplify our immune systems. So these chemicals that we get addicted to, they really do feel good to us when we understand what's happening. When we're off of social media too long, we get anxious, just like an addict. Obviously, this is different from heroin, things that are going to kill you if you don't figure out how to stop. But it's the process is very, very, very similar. Internet addiction is a thing. Porn addiction is a thing. Fortunately, it won't kill you. You have time to catch it and work with it. But notice when you put your phone down or your timer is like, hey, you've spent an hour on Twitter, time to put it down, you hit the dismiss button. Or you don't put your phone down. Or you do put your phone down and and then this antsy restlessness starts to happen. And then before you know it, you've picked up your phone again, or you're pacing around miserable because you can't get your hit. Your brain is like, hey, we're used to the chaos cocktail and it's been 20 minutes since we had some, so this is our normal, so we need to maintain that. And, let's get itchy and antsy and go get another hit of it. Or let's go stir up drama and so we can get another hit. let's let a normal house repair bill knock us for a loop for 3 days, and we have to collapse in exhaustion. So then those trauma responses are what you should be looking for. Fighting, picking fights, fleeing, running away, through actual running away, like staying far away from your work or whatever, or running away figuratively through food or pot or TV or however you internally run away. Check out, you could say that. Fight, flee. What's the other one? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop. Freezing can look also like anesthetizing yourself. Opiates, food, things that move you to an artificial stillness. Your addictive freeze response can look like excessive meditation, excessive book reading. Constantly reading books can be a form of escapism, and it can be a form of fleeing or freezing. Or just numbness, just wandering around, having tasks to do, but not being able to focus and frozen energetically. Fawning is running around, everybody calm down, love and light, peanut butter and jelly. It's the ones that are like, stop the chaos. I can't handle these feelings that everyone's producing, and all lives matter, and we live under the same sun, or it's those that the fawning thing. Let me compliment you, let me calm you down, let me do whatever it takes to make everybody happy. So this leads to burnout, agreeing to too many things. I'm oversimplifying the shit out of this, but I want you to look and see if you're doing any of these things. Like suddenly caretaking everybody can be a fawning trauma response. It's anxiety, right? Trying to soothe the anxiety by calming everybody down. Mom and dad are fighting, although mom and dad might be your boss and your colleague, and you just feel compelled to get in the middle of that and compliment everybody and make everybody feel good, so they'll stop doing those things that they do, so you don't have to feel those things that you feel. And then flopping. Cynicism, resignation. Well, they all suck, so I'm just not going to do anything. Apathy. Or why me? Or I saw this coming a year ago. I've seen a lot of that too. And I'm guilty of that too, like hipster syndrome. Well, I liked, whoever's popular now that wasn't. I liked them way before everybody else did. And we get all offended that our previous college bands are now popular, and now we're all butthurt about it because we knew them 10 years ago, and now they're trendy, and so we can't like them anymore. I don't know where I'm going with this. Flop. Flop looks like victim mentality, and it sounds victim-y. Everyone has stressed me out so much that now I have to go to bed for 3 days because this world just can't get its shit together, and I can't handle all these emotions and chaos, and I'm exhausted, and, flop, hand on the head. Oh my, I got a case of the vapors. I gotta lay down now for 40 years. That's my favorite. The I can't handle it, or which is, when people who know me from before I don't know if they knew that because I'm always in motion doing something, but I often feel like giving up. So it can feel like that. Like, I don't want to do this business anymore. All people suck. I don't want to work with any of them. I don't want to do anything. Um, so bitterness, cynicism, which bitterness is the default for projectors under stress. So it all makes sense now. And actually, that helped me stop judging myself so harshly, because who wants to admit to being a victim and a quitter on the inside? Even if you never quit on the outside, on the inside, you're always like, fuck it. No one appreciates all the effort. I do this and they do half of that, and I mean, gross, right? Ugh. We have a repugnant reaction to that because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for us either. But then I found out that it's your system trying to push everybody away, which it does because you haven't taken care of yourself. So anyway, constant exposure to trauma. Look at your life. So the cruising and policing everybody and like smashing down on things that aren't done the way you think they should be done, that's fight. I'm going to go and I'm going to make this be different. I'm going to make you do it my way. I'm going to force this election to happen. I'm going to force this election to unhappen. I'm going to do lots of incantations and dance naked under the moon to try and so my team will win, you know? And I know that sometimes I can sound like super judgy, and sometimes I am super judgy. So we'll just say that, but I'm not trying to be super judgy. I'm trying to get your attention because there's some significantly unhealthy things happening, and I care about y'all, and I don't want you to get sick from it. I catch it in myself, and I'm like, well, I know if I'm doing it, other people are doing it. So it's this weird place, right? We can't control other people. But like I've said in the past, you have to make the decisions that mean that you can sleep at night, that mean you can face yourself in the mirror and say, I've thought about it, I've meditated, I've prayed, and this is the way I'm going to handle my biz. This is the way I'm going to handle my shiz going forward. Like, these are the parameters. These are the actions that match my internal values, which is much different than the reactivity of smash, smash, or collapse, collapse, or let me throw this blanket of love and light language on you to try and settle your ass down. You know? So, what I want you to know is that's normal. It's not your normal because it's not what you were used to before the world exploded, right? So what's happening, I suspect, is it is becoming the new normal. That people have been inundated who aren't drawn to traumatic jobs. If you've been in a trauma field or you've been a first responder, it might be easier to catch, like, oh, these are those things that I felt back when I had a couple of diagnoses. But if you haven't been an emergency worker, I doubt that you're catching it. So take a look in your life and know that if you are overdoing the Cheetos when that's not your normal go-to, you know? Like if you're like chowing down on Totino's pizza rolls, and you don't normally eat that kind of crap, that's something you need to take a look at. If you aren't normally spending 5 hours on Twitter, but the last 2 years you have, know that your brain is now conditioned. We have created for ourselves some new stimulus response loops. Stimulus is you get poked with a sharp object and you pull away from it. Poke is the stimulus, pulling away is the response. The stimulus is political chaos, and the response can take one of those 5 forms: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or flop. Probably more than that. We're just going to go with those categories for purposes of a starting point. And then that starts to become your addictive new normal. You're in a trauma state, and your body has become addicted to chemicals that have become familiar. So we already were a nation of addicts because we're encouraged to be addicts. We're encouraged to numb out and spend too much money. That's another one. If you're spending like ridiculous amounts of money, and that's not what you normally do. But we're encouraged to consume more, bigger, bigger drinks, bigger fries, spend more. But then you're a shit if you go into debt or you max out your credit card. Spend. Oh, now you're a bad person because you ran up your credit cards. So it's this twisted fucked upness that contributes to us being a nation of addicts already. And then now we have like this exposure of shock and horror. And that's true, whatever your viewpoint. Shock, horror, your mind has to push that knowledge away, or it has to rearrange the furniture and find a way to assimilate, accommodate new information. It's hard. It's hard on our brains to have to accommodate new information on a good day. But we've just been pounded with it. So whatever you're doing, ask yourself, what's your motivation? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be you feel anxious. You don't know how to feel anxious or scared. You don't know how to be with your fear because no one teaches us that. So that energy is going to go somewhere, so it comes out in these patterns. Where is so think about those 5 categories and then take a look at your life and ask yourself, because you may not catch it. When we're in the shit, we don't catch it. When we're in the churn, we don't know it. We often don't know how crazy we have been acting until it's long past. And we can look back and go, oh my God, I was a lunatic. But we need to look at ourselves currently and at the past with compassionate curiosity. Compassionate curiosity heals. Compassionate curiosity makes space for you to see these things. If you go internally policing, those little wounded parts of you are not going to come out because they know you're looking to smash them and kick them back into a closet, right? They're not going to, the awareness will not come if you're approaching it in a harsh manner. You also may not get it. You may think, well, I'm doing this thing, but you're not really, because you won't be able to really feel the motivation because you haven't made it safe for yourself. So if you want to treat this like a journal exercise, you could write down, first go to Google and read more about it, because obviously I'm not giving you even a tenth of a percent worth of valuable knowledge about all those categories. I'm just like giving you the broadest labels. But you could write this down in a journal. Go to Google, read about the trauma responses. Read a little bit about addiction. And then give yourself 30 minutes or so. Make yourself a cup of tea. Write those categories down on a piece of paper. And then sit with each one of them. If I was experiencing the fight response in my own life, I wonder what that would look like. Where am I experiencing conflict? Where am I lashing out? Where has my tolerance button, become hair trigger? You have no tolerance, right? A lot of us get that way. We can't take it, so we just have no tolerance. And that can come out as anger. And then go through the same thing. Where might I be freezing? Where might I be fleeing? Where might I be fawning and trying to soothe people out of their anger so that, I don't have to deal with it or I don't have to feel it, is really what it comes down to. We don't want to have to feel things. And we've been forced to feel fear, normal. Things are scary. When things get upended, our root chakras detach. We're scared. And even if you don't label it fear, even if you just say, well, I'm just uncomfortable, okay, whatever. Nitpick over the word if you have to. But know that at the bottom of it all is a fear that we're going to die. Every single fear you have goes back to, we're programmed to survive. So everything goes back to a fear of dying, right? We're made to keep going, to survive as a species. That is a thing so deeply hardwired, you couldn't undo that if you tried. So ask yourself, where is my normal human fear showing up? When did I first notice it? Where is it coming out? How do I feel about fear? Do I even let myself feel fear? I wonder which emotions I might be shoving in a closet and not dealing with. I wonder if I've gotten so addicted to the chemicals that my brain produces when it's in fear, when things are chaotic, that now I'm actually looking for things to stimulate that so I can feel, air quote, normal. I've gotten used to feeling jacked up every other day. Now, obviously, we're not, the jacking up every day thing is still happening. But eventually that is going to stop. Spanish flu lasted 2 years. Bubonic plague lasted 4. I mean, eventually we know that nothing lasts forever. Things will calm down. Life will always settle. Then upheaval will come again, but it will settle and then it will upheave itself. So if you take a look at your drinking, your eating, your sleeping, your sexing, your reading, you could do even a time study for a few days. A time study, if you haven't ever done one, and you don't have to do it every 15 minutes, but in some agencies, they torment their workers by putting them through time studies because they want to make sure that every minute, God forbid you should take a 10-minute break or whatever. Anyway, did I mention that bitterness is... I might still have some grief work to do around my early career choices. So, time study is just when you wake up every 15-30 minutes, you just carry a notebook around with you and you write down what you're doing. You can set an alarm to go off every 15 minutes on your phone. Every 30 minutes is reasonable, I think. And when the timer goes off, you just write in your notebook, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? And if for 3 hours, every time the timer goes off and you have to write down, I'm on Twitter, uh, I'm on Facebook, I'm mad at this person, I'm calling out this person, but not directly, I'm calling them out sideways by, I'm unfriending, I'm got my head in the Cheeto bag. Like, it will get real clear for you real quick why none of your other shit's getting done. And you can't judge it. Well, you can obviously do whatever you want to, but if you want to unwind this, you can't judge it. You have to find some way to understand that this is a normal brain thing. It is a normal brain response. All your brain is doing is, oh, we got this chemical cocktail, and then we got it again, and then we got it again, and then we got it again. So now let's just make it every day. And if nothing outside is triggering it, let's make up shit in our head and trigger it. Okay, it's a normal brain thing. You don't need to feel bad about it. You don't need to whoop your own ass about it. You don't need to do anything but recognize it's normal and then decide what you want to do with that information. Just as your brain got addicted to chaos, it can become addicted to calm. Life is never calm all the time. There won't ever be a day when you are like, check and done. I got this human gig mastered. I can feel all the emotions. I can handle all the things. When that happens, if that happens, you're probably going to die soon because what else are you going to do? Right? If you've done it all, then I guess you become Buddha and wander the earth, teaching the rest of us how to do it. So, write down all the trauma, research. Do a little research on trauma response. Do a little research on addictions. Don't lose your mind over it. Just lightly do a little research on the brain stuff. And then write those things down on paper and start exploring. Don't automatically assume you're not doing one of the 5, because chances are the one you think you're doing right off the top of your head isn't it, because we're masters at self-deception. We lie like dogs to ourselves. In fact, there's an earlier podcast episode about how much we fucking lie to ourselves. We lie to ourselves all the time. We can't see ourselves for shit. That's what keeps coaches and therapists in business. We can't see ourselves. I'll always have a coach or a therapist in my life somewhere. I know I can't see what I'm doing. If I catch anything that I'm doing, I'm so proud of myself, I just can't hardly even stand it. So go through all of them. Don't assume, oh, well, I would never be the fight person. Don't assume that. If you think you would never be it, you're probably doing it all day long. So this is some shadow work too, right? If you want 40 days of shadow stuff, you can go to thatmichellewolf.com/shadow blessings. That will get you access to 40 plus videos on how to expose your shadow selves and find out what you're doing by using externals. Social media treasure hunt is one of my favorites in that setup. I think I've got it at like $49 or something because it's a DIY course. with a Facebook group. But the Facebook group is not active, but you can go through there and look at materials. But social media treasure hunt is you go back. I think earlier I said 6 months, but maybe just a few weeks. You go back and look at what you're posting, what you're sharing, and notice what the theme is. Are you sharing scary things? Are you sharing super uber positive things? Are you sharing a mix? What are you talking about? If you're on Twitter, what's the theme? Twitter's my rage space. My angry lives on Twitter. The mouthy part of me that likes to say things lives over on Twitter. Because that's what Twitter is, right? It's a place where people scream and yell. Nothing's getting done. But Twitter is where I go for news because Twitter has the news faster than any of the other platforms. Anyway, social media treasure hunt. Go take a look. And then you go take a look at all and notice all the things that trigger you. Notice all the things that make you want to be like, she shouldn't say that. He shouldn't say that. She has this responsibility or that responsibility. They have this responsibility or that responsibility, and they're not doing it right. They should be this or that. They shouldn't be this or that. Social media treasure hunt is the best way to flush out what you're actually doing to yourself, right? So just go on social media and know how long can you stay on there before you're pissed? How long can you stay on there before you're like, this and that, and Aunt Mabel, and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't take long. And then you're like, oh, there you are, you little shadow you. Oh, there you are, my brain searching for a way to get a chaos cocktail started. Look at my little brain trying to keep me alive. Isn't that sweet? Now, what do we want to do with this? So, figure all that stuff out, and then don't think about it. Thinking about things doesn't resolve things. It doesn't. Go back and look at your journals and tell me how many things you've resolved by writing about them 1,000 times. Do you ever go look back in your journals? Aren't you still writing about the same fucking things? Usually. It's only in the last 2 years that I told my daughter, burn these journals, but keep these journals. These are good. There's some good stuff in here. But burn these other ones because they're garbage. I actually burned a dozen of them myself, which was hard to do, but I did burn them up. They were all the same damn thing anyway, so so don't just think about it. Write about it. That's fine. But then do something. Get those feelings going and take a walk. Move your body. All right, because we're avoiding feeling. At the bottom of all of this, we're avoiding feeling. Feeling chaotic and freaked out all the time has become allowable, so we're letting ourselves stay there, but we're not letting ourselves shift out of it, right? And then we're getting caught in this trauma loop and we re-traumatize ourselves over and over all day long. And so then we're stuck in this loop that we can't even see, and it never resolves itself. When shitty things happen, within a few days or hours, you should have a different perspective about it. You should be calm and be able to make a choice, to look at your options and choose one, just as a place to start. It shouldn't go on and on and on. But we're not completing those loops. And then the next day we get another one. And the next day we get two more. And then So Figure out what you're doing. Put your phone down. Set the limits and honor them. Keep the promises to yourself. This is very important for the heart, ego, will center in your human design. It is the center for promises and integrity. And when you promise yourself when the timer goes off and you've had your hour of Twitter and you ignore it, you break a promise to yourself. You're out of integrity. You're a promise breaker. That hurts you in ways I think we don't even fully realize. It hurts us when we break those agreements. There's absolutely no reason for you to spend 6 hours on Twitter, Michelle. That's what I tell myself. Hey, the timer went off. Put that shit down. There's absolutely no reason for you to be spending 6 hours on Twitter. Okay? Then physically move. So here's another one you can do. You in the Shadow Blessings course, I call it skills for feels, like these few little things that you can do physically. Like we can't just think up in our head. We've got to. This is the whole basis for holistic magic, which, by the way, last day to sign up for that is today at midnight, January 8th. We have to learn how to feel. And this is a way we can do it. We can use these trauma responses. We can use this information to ask ourselves, what am I afraid of feeling? Am I afraid that if I'm not caught up in the chaos, I'm a bad person? That if I'm not swept up in the yada yada, for whatever side you're on, it doesn't matter. Like the responses are the same at the core. It's fear and anxiety. And everybody pointing the finger and saying, you're the scared one. No, you're the scared one. Well, we're all fucking scared. That's why we're acting like weirdos. So cross your arms, like corpse position. It's called the butterfly. Cross your arms so that your hands are touching your shoulders. And tap one side and then tap the other. Tap one side and tap the other. Bilateral tapping. Bilateral stimulation. Tap it at a rate that's slightly uncomfortable, like this is to move it through. If you're just wanting to calm down, tap at a slow rate. 1, 2, 1, 2, back and forth. This is low level. It won't trigger you into like some scary place. It will help you process. The bilateral tappity-tappitness helps your brain resolve whatever it's grinding on. So it's like your brain gets stuck in third gear. I probably need a different analogy because I think so many people now don't know how to drive a stick, which is a crime in my opinion, but your brain gets stuck. And it can't move to resolution where you feel better and you can take a look and decide what you're going to do. You can take a look at your business and decide how are you going to handle it. You can take a look at things and make decisions about them that aren't reactive and trying to soothe anxiety. Okay, so crossing your arms, alternate tapping. Till you feel better. Minute, 2 minutes, doesn't even really take that long. So we know that emotions, pure, intense emotions, don't last any more than 2 minutes. I think it's changed now, but when I was being trained in EMDR, which is a trauma therapy, it's eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. I don't do it anymore because I'm not a therapist, but I have a guy if you need a referral. So the bilateral tap, I think I wanted to say something, but I got distracted, and I just noticed I've been talking forever, so let me wrap this up. So the butterfly, bilateral tapping, EFT tapping. Don't worry about following a script. Just tap on the top of your head, tap on your eyebrows, tap on your collarbones. I like alternate tapping on my collarbones where you're like right at the base of your throat. There's some little notches under there. Sometimes if you push on them, they're a little bit tender. They're like acupressure points. Alternate tap on that. If you want somebody who does intuitive sessions with random EFT tapping, I know somebody if you want a referral for that. I know a lot of people that do cool stuff. So you can do that. Just tap on your body. Just alternate tap on the bottoms of your feet. You're doing anything you can to engage your body with this process. You can march in place at the kitchen sink. You can get yourself all riled up and dance. You can stand in place and just shake. This one helps me a lot. When intense emotion, when I first started learning how to stay embodied while experiencing intense emotions. Thank you, Sarah Ballard, Koya person extraordinaire. Koya extraordinaire. Beautiful Queen Sarah. So many people have helped me along my way. I would have to do a 10-hour podcast episode just to thank them all. But the shaking thing helped me a ton. All these intense, I would flooding emotions, racing thoughts, intrusive thoughts, triggering then a flooding of emotional sensation. And then you can just stand up and shake. Just so it doesn't matter the order. You can't fuck this up. Crossing your arms and alternate tapping your shoulders will help you feel better. If you're in a meeting or something and you don't want to, anybody asking you like, what are you doing over there, Bob, with your tapping? What's that about? You can cross your arms and just slightly alternate tap on your ribs. Fold your arms in front of you, alternate tap on your ribs. It doesn't have to be huge. You're just touching. Hey, body, I'm here. Cross. 1, 2, 1, 2. Help your brain. So standing up and shaking, dancing, taking a walk, crossing the body, right? Left, right, left, right. Walking. Everybody knows that walking helps. Now, if you can't go outside and take a walk, you can walk around your house. If prisoners can walk in a 10 by 10 cell and stay in shape, you certainly can walk in your house. Just walk in your house or walk in place. Do something physical. Don't just sit and ruminate about it. Don't just journal 1,400 pages about it. It doesn't work. That's why talk therapy doesn't work. Talk therapy works for some things, but not everything, and it certainly doesn't work. In my experience, not even just my opinion, but in my experience, it doesn't work for trauma responses and brains that are hooked on cortisol and adrenaline and dopamine and all the things, all the brainy things. It doesn't work. It won't help you learn to tolerate sensation. And here's the last thing I'll say. Our species, I can't speak to any other cultures except American, and the American culture I know best is Texas. Even though I lived in Colorado 25 years, all my early, life was spent in Texas and Mississippi. So that's what I know best of all. But generally, as a species, we don't like feeling. We've been taught that that's a bad, bad thing. Smile when you don't mean it. Say yes when you mean no. Do not question authority. Don't question God. Don't backtalk. Don't speak out of turn. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. Like all these things. We have learned to tune out emotion. Everyone has the capacity to be an empath. Everyone has the capacity to develop the skills to feel more and not be knocked over every time something happens. I see this so much, and I know I offend people when I say it, but I feel compelled. I will keep saying it. Being an empath is not a fragile thing. You've been taught that it is, and you don't know how to handle the sensations physically of the things that you receive energetically. Wrapping yourself up in a cocoon is not the answer. Spending a lot of energy on shielding and protective spells and things like that, that's fine as a starting point, but it's not the long-term answer. The long-term answer is training ourselves to feel our life inside of a physical body, to stop tuning it out, to stop turning a blind eye to our body's cries and wails for our attention, to stop shoving food in its face, to stop burning its eyes out on tiny little screens, to stop picking arguments, to burning out your adrenals, to stop collapsing like a house of cards every time something goes wrong. I'm going to have to stop or I'm going to soapbox the fuck out of y'all. Maybe that'll be the next episode. It's nothing new. I've said it a lot before, but I think I'm just going to get louder because it matters. It hurts when I see people hurting unnecessarily. You don't have to be afraid of the energies of life. You don't have to let them send you running for the bed to get under the bed, or to get under your covers and hide for 10 years. You don't have to fall into these addictive patterns. You're not free if you're stuck in an addictive pattern. That's finally a piece of what got me off of cigarettes. Because for me, cigarettes were every bit as bad as heroin. I've known a lot of heroin addicts, and they totally described what it went through with cigarettes. My brain treated cigarettes like heroin. Oh, funny, not funny. But I finally was like, I don't like being a slave. I am enslaved to this fucking cigarette. And I will not be enslaved to a social media platform. And I will not be enslaved to the constant chaos. I will not. I will train myself to feel all these energies and strip away the judgments so that I can feel them as the energies that they are, and I can still stand. And I want that for anybody else who has any desire to strengthen and train themselves to me, that's sovereignty, full sovereignty. Okay, I'm going to stop. I said I was going to stop like 10 minutes ago, and now I'm really going to stop. So we'll talk more about that. If you want 6 months of that, of me ranting at you and us doing a lot of exercises using human design, the 9 centers as a framework, you've got about 24 hours to get in on that. If you listen to this on the 9th and you really, really want in, obviously send me a message and we'll figure it out. What will happen when people sign up late, what happens is I mail you stuff, like actual stuff in the mail. And so sometimes people who jump in at the last minute don't get their box of goodies on time, which is fine if you're okay with that. But anyway, you can see thatmichellewolf.com/holistic magic. Holistic is the name of the game. And then if you want the Shadow Blessings exploration, exploring your shadow, it's thatmichellewolf.com/shadow blessings. All right. In the meantime, as always, think less. Feel more. Think less. Feel more. Really feel the feels. I love y'all so much. I'll talk to you next time.